Tonight I'd like to talk about the impact that the Labour Party, and more specifically its supporters and voters, can have on the independence referendum. I'd also like to talk about the reasons why independence is so important for the future of Scotland and also the Labour Party. For nearly all my life I've been a Labour supporter. I was brought up in a Labour family, and for most of my life I've also believed in independence for Scotland. Through the last 10 years I've often asked the Labour head offices about the duality of my situation. And every time I was met with the same answer: if you want independence, vote for the SNP. Now, I admire their honesty, but I don't really want to give up on my party because of a small number in the head office have decided our policy on independence. So I began Labour for Independence, a group, to see if I was alone in my thinking, to see if there were other Labour voters out there who felt we would be better as an independent nation. Well, as we've seen through our continual growth and support, there are many more of us who feel this way within the Labour Party. But it's not just on independence that we are at odds with the party. The Scottish Labour Party today are disorganised, unresponsive, and most importantly, unsure of the foundations from which it stands. Scotland has changed, and the Labour Party has not risen to meet her. Indeed, it only seems that the only thing my party can do well these days in Scotland is say no. So now we have a Scottish Labour Party run by Westminster whose sole focus is re-election to the Westminster Parliament. So it's hardly a surprise when the Westminster Labour Party see the Scottish votes as safe ones and introduce policies that appeal to needed voters in Middle England and London. But for a Scottish Labour Party to peddle out these policies, flying against the traditions and fibres of the Labour Party in this country, it is a disgusting act of political careerism. And for the leader of my party to say that Scotland is a something-for-nothing society did nothing more than desecrate the memory of James Keir Hardie. So it's clear to us that the only way for our party to return to its founding principles, to return to being the party of the people of Scotland, is to be removed from the shackles of Westminster, and that can only happen in an independent Scotland. To return to the Labour Party we believe in, we must have Scottish independence, and to have a strong, successful, socially just Scotland, we must have a real Scottish Labour Party at the heart of it. Labour for Independence will play an important role in this referendum. We kind of show that it's not a nationalist issue. You know, it's not about whether you like Braveheart or not. It's about what kind of society we want to be. So let's take a look at the society we have today in Scotland. Run by Westminster, we have a society in which the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We have CEOs of banks which destroyed our economy, taking bonuses of millions of pounds while allowing small businesses to collapse and family homes to be foreclosed. We have a government in London handing out an allowance for us to spend while taking far more back in our resources and trade. We have a Tory party in power which won one seat in this country. 1.7% of Scotland's MPs running our affairs, in which 9% of the politicians actually represent Scotland. We have a Westminster Parliament slashing financial help to those who need the most help, while the Scottish MPs voted unanimously against it. And we have a Parliament which, while cutting benefits to the country's poorest, asked for a 32% pay rise for themselves, because apparently £65,000 a year isn't enough to live off of. So much so that Tory MP Andrew Bigden said, I won't do the voice. I know MPs who will say in private that every year they're getting poorer. A man or a woman who's very capable, doing very well in their profession, whatever that may be, with a family, are they going to be willing to take that pay cut, look their children in the eye when it's Christmas and say, well, you can't have what you normally have because mummy or daddy wanted to be an MP? Well, we've all heard of wife swap before, but maybe Mr Bigden should go on benefit swap and see how it is for mums and dads living on benefits or minimum wage who have to look their kids in the eyes and tell them they won't get anything at Christmas time. But most importantly, this is a society that's the fourth most unequal in the world. A society in which 1 in 5 Scottish children live in poverty. Parents are having to go without meals to make sure their children are being fed properly. Old age pensioners are having to decide whether to have a meal or whether to heat their house. Independence is our best chance to change this, to shape our nation, making it fairer, more equal, giving our children the chance of a better future. Now, I know there are people out there who, and I hope there are some people who aren't convinced about independence yet, and I hope we will persuade you. There are some people out there who will agree with everything I've just said and will still vote no. It's the socialist Labour argument, or as of Monday, the United with Labour argument, that the worker in Fife is more in common with the worker in Liverpool than they do with the businessman in Perth. The real sentiment behind it for many is that if we leave the Union, we'll be subjugating Northern England to a lifetime of the Tories. Now, this is an honourable notion, but we have to look beyond this to an uncomfortable truth that many in the Labour Party are slowly waking up to. In order to be elected at Westminster, the Labour Party must move towards the policies and beliefs of the power base, namely Middle England and London. These beliefs come nowhere close to the issues or needs that Scotland face, nor do the policies reflect the vast potential and pitfalls which inhabit our nation. Ed Miliband admitted it himself. He said, "There's no future for Labour in not being a party of the middle class." The real question we in the Scottish Labour Party should be asking is, do we stay with the Union and have a blue Tory government we didn't vote for, or do we vote for a red Tory government that we did vote for, or do we choose another way? Do we choose an independent Scotland with a Labour Party free from the power base of Middle England, one which is representative of the people of Scotland, not just the middle class? A chance to return to the basic foundations of our great party, while constantly reaching out to do better. A party in which Keir Hardie, Bevan and Smith would be proud to call their home. The Westminster system has tried and it has failed. While we have worked together for a better society, it is now clear our dream will not be realised within the current structure. We should not feel we are abandoning the rest of the UK. We should look to set an example, to show them and the world how possible it is to be a socially just, economically vibrant, fair and equal society, one which puts the whole of the people before the sum of its parts. United with Labour claim independence will build barricades between a family, but our cultural ties with them will not be broken. We only ask to have the chance to decide for ourselves what kind of society we want. Independence isn't about getting away, wanting to get away from the Union. The United for Labour video that launched their campaign was right. We have achieved a great deal as part of this United Kingdom. The welfare state, the NHS. We fought off the threat of fascism standing shoulder to shoulder together. But these events all occurred more than 60 years ago. The Union has taken us as far as we can go. For Scotland to move forward, to face the challenges we have, to make full use of our potential, we must break free from the bounds of this partnership. So what kind of society do we want to have? Well, believe it or not, the Yes campaign is not just the SNP. There are the SSP, the Greens, Labour for Independence and many others. Women for Independence as well. Just getting that in there. So it's important for all parties and organisations to set out what their vision of an independent Scotland would be. And in light of the Labour headquarters refusing to do this, Labour for Independence has set out what we believe to be some real Labour policies. The first policy we already announced is that, like 80% of the Scottish people, we support a complete removal of all nuclear weapons from this land. We believe that a nuclear arsenal on our doorstep is both dangerous and unwarranted in this nation. We hope that they will lead the way forward as an example to all nations to remove such weaponry. Now, at this time, I've got a little confession to tell you all, because, you see, at the last Scottish leadership elections, I actually voted for Joanne Lamont. And I always get that response as well. Now, there was no great merit in any of the candidates, but the one reason that I voted for her was her opposition to Trident. Well, all I can say to her is, I hope that seat in the shadow cabinet meeting was worth it. The fact she went against her own beliefs, the safety and financial security of her country, for a hoist up the greasy pole of the Labour Party tells you everything you need to know about that woman. Labour for Independence will adhere to the founding principles of the Labour Party of fairness, equality and justice. We will also strive to keep in place some of our greatest creations in the NHS and the welfare state. We will seek ways to improve, but we will never remove our belief in free education and healthcare for all at the point of service. An abolition of a minimum wage and in its place a living wage, one which reflects real living costs and prices. A living wage will protect the most vulnerable, removing most from the poverty line and costing the country less in tax credits and other forms of income support. These are visions, just some of the visions of a socially just, independent Scotland, and they are the visions of a real Scottish Labour Party. Labour for Independence, Yes Scotland and all pro-independence movements will work hard to promote a positive message for independence. We know what society we want for our future. We believe in Scotland. We don't think that we're too daft, too wee or too stupid. The vote on the referendum next year will be the most important of our lives. While the Tory backbenchers say that their EU referendum will be the first time that their voices have been heard in 40 years, our referendum is the first time in 300 years that our voices will be heard. Scotland is probably the most frustrating place in the world. We have so much to offer, so much to be proud of, so much still left to achieve. If we could only just believe in ourselves. I believe the people of Scotland will make the right choice. The choice of hope, the choice of change, the choice of a better nation. And I urge you all to think differently, think of Scotland, and think yes. Thank you very much.